Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Cringy Movie Collection podcast. Wow.
Well, we're ready to cringe. Not as much as I thought, but still a little bit.
Do we remember any wows in Yumi and Dupree?
No, I think that there was a moment in which I was really expecting it, but then it just made like, whoa.
Oh.
Oh.
Wow. I also feel like in this movie in particular, Owen Wilson is so quiet. Like, the mixing is so weird. Like, I don't know. But we'll talk about it. Anyway, if you haven't guessed, the movie of the week is You, Me, and Dupree from 2006. And that's what we're talking about. And let's just start with a little summary of the movie. I mean, maybe I should say I got this DVD because Owen Wilson was on the cover.
Oh.
Owen Wilson 2006 was probably a big deal. I don't know. Like, I mean, he's still adorable, but
Yeah.
he's less of a box office draw, probably. I don't know. Was he in 2006? I don't know. What was he in? He did that Jackie Chan movie, which I remember, but
I don't know, the first time I saw Owen Wilson was in Midnight in Paris.
that's much later, isn't it?
I
That's
know.
like 2011
I'm
or
just
something
not
like
used
that?
to comedies.
Okay. Well, I love Owen Wilson. Oh, yeah, he was in Wedding Crashers.
Oh,
that was the
yeah.
big deal. Oh, wow.
And Zoolander.
Yes. So that was around that time. And here comes a comedy with Owen Wilson hugging two people and grinning on the cover. And I bought it. It was in a bargain bin. You know how it goes. And that's why I have it. This is about a newly married couple. We got Molly and Carl. And they just got married, and almost immediately after the wedding, they have their own little suburban house, you know, the American dream and all that. Right after the wedding, Dupree, who is Carl's best friend, falls on hard times. He loses his house and his car and his job. And Carl goes like, you know what, move in with us. Like you can stay with us for a while, get back on your feet, all that. And Dupree is a bit of a, how would you say, a misfit? A bit of a weirdo?
It's not been house trained.
Yeah. And he's not, the most functional human being, even though he's probably the most thoughtful.
And he whispers wherever he talks.
Yeah, he says everything as if it's deep.
Yeah.
Oh, I should tell you this. Anyway, he causes some problems. There's a lot of hijinks. Carl also at the same time gets in a little bit of trouble at work because he works for his wife's father, who doesn't seem to like him all that much, and he kind of, systematically ruins his life. His father is played by Michael Douglas, who is strangely delightful.
Why is he is always delightful?
Yeah. No, but he plays such an asshole. That's what, it's strange that he's delightful. You know what I mean?
No, this is what
Okay.
he does. He's being the delightful asshole. This is
Okay.
his role in life.
So everything comes to a escalation point. Carl feels more and more alienated. There's actually one of those classic things, which I definitely don't like, where there's a sense of misunderstanding between Molly and Carl.
Yeah, they
where
just talk a second between each other and figure out the problem, but we don't do it, and so it escalates.
So Carl thinks that maybe Molly is either having an affair or being attracted to Dupree, or the other way around. So he feels betrayed and alone and all that, and he fucks off. He goes to a bar to get wasted. Actually, he kind of gets kicked out after he misbehaves in certain ways at a family dinner, and gets beat up by Michael Douglas with a candlestick. So Dupree sees it as his life's mission to reunite Carl with his wife and fix the damage that potentially, he kind of caused.
Yeah, because it made the Carl lose his Carlness.
Yes. And they succeed in that. They kind of find, like, one of the things they do is they confront Michael Douglas, like the Bob Thompson, about whether or not he likes Carl, and he gets very evasive. He goes like, well, like he doesn't want to answer the question, and so then like Molly kind of understands that Carl isn't just being paranoid about the crazy things that are happening at work. And
But
that helps.
also, it feels that he's more paranoid because Carl didn't say anything when the first thing happened and the second thing happens, and he just like dumped everything all in once.
Yeah.
And also with this like fishing thing, because apparently Molly's dad always invites somebody that he likes fishing with him, and he never invites Carl.
Yeah.
But the first time that we know about it is when like just Carl has got enough of it and is just like saying to Molly all the terrible things her father did. Well, he could just say, like, the first thing that happens is that Molly's dad asks him to hyphenate his surname so that they both keep the family name of Michael Douglas.
Yeah, he wants Carl to do the hyphen rather than Molly.
Yes, instead of her taking his name, he wants him taking her name, and he's really upset about it. But then he doesn't go home to Molly and say, "Oh, you know what? Like, your dad asked me this. Like, what is this something that you want?" He just assumed that what Molly's dad wants is what also Molly's want for some reason.
I don't know about that, but it is true that like this kind of like he doesn't take the things that bother him at work home, so Molly doesn't know what's going on with him emotionally,
But also,
which I think is not good for any relationship. And it's also, like I can understand, I do that. Like I don't bring every single thing that bothers me at work home, but I don't work for your dad.
Yeah,
which is a
exactly.
different
Like
thing.
the thing about the hyphenation is not even a work thing. It's just something that your wife's dad said to you, because the other thing is like it made him head of a project, but then he changed everything. And this is more of a work-related thing that can still like be in the plot.
But asking your employee to get a vasectomy is
that's
definitely not a classic
not a
work-related
thing. Like
problem.
it's something that he should discuss because it's her dad saying these things to him, not his boss saying these things to him.
Absolutely. And this brings me to what I absolutely hate about this movie, which is just like it's written in such a unrealistic way. For the most part, these characters don't behave like characters. They are, especially Carl and Bob. Bob just says things because it's funny sometimes, like because the script would be funnier if he said that. Not like who actually overtly suggests a vasectomy to their son-in-law right after the wedding. Like that's just like, and it doesn't even make sense because he's worried about his legacy. So he wants Carl to keep the Thompson name and then have kids, presumably. But then he wants, like, it doesn't make sense. It's just kind of like, it would be funny to have this. And so it's like, it's kind of over the top, but this movie doesn't really commit to being over the top.
Yeah.
And also I think that Carl, like, so quickly becomes a bad guy when he's supposed to be the straight man to Dupree, like functionally for the comedy. But he does so many things that are bad for his relationship that makes him like seem like an idiot.
I think that what happens is that we are introduced to Dupree being very disrespectful because as soon as they welcome him home, he makes himself a bit too much at home.
Yeah, he gets HBO.
Yeah, it's just.
And by the way, Carl is half okay with Dupree's shenanigans. Like we immediately see him watching The Sopranos afterwards. Like he doesn't mind it actually that Dupree gets HBO.
But so basically the concept is that we just start thinking about Dupree. Oh, who is this guy? Like he has no respect for them helping him out. But then we start also seeing like that Carl is actually very emotionally closed and he cannot really communicate a lot. And in the meantime, we start seeing that. Dupree has all these faults, but he can't really like feel his feelings and share them.
He's open to feeling things.
We start seeing that maybe Carl is not all perfect, and maybe Dupree is not all like bad because they share like because of this common thing that one doesn't say his feelings and the other one is very good at saying the feelings.
I think also part of it is that, I was a little younger when I watched this movie. I was like 17, 18. I was idealistic about relationships. And I think it's difficult to follow the motivations, particularly of Carl, but also some other characters, where it's like, it's like one of the things that Carl does at some point is he outsources writing thank you notes for wedding gifts to Dupree. But like a few scenes before, his new wife actually asked him if she should help him with it. So it was like, if he didn't want to do it, he could have just accepted some help.
He felt that he should do half of the work and not only all the work, but then he realized that he didn't have time, and it was in the free time that he had, he didn't want to answer.
But I just felt like, this is like kind of like, oh, he's setting up this thing where like Dupree does chores for him behind Molly's back. And it's like, you just married this woman. What the fuck are you doing? Like she even didn't seem like it was a big deal for her to like do your half of the thank you notes even. Like it's just like one of those things. It's like what are you saying about these characters that they just got married on a whim? I don't know. Like it just seems inconsistent.
But I think that is also try to portray this like stereotypical view of marriage in which the guy has to suck it up and do what the wife wants, and he can't really hang out with his friends, especially like Seth Rogen character. We see a lot of that he has to ask permissions and stuff.
He is a different comedy stereotype.
Yeah, and then we have Dupree, that is another comedy stereotype, and then we have Carl, that is kind of trying to get to fit in one shoe.
Yeah, he tries to make it work, right?
Yeah.
And he sees the Seth Rogen world, and he's like, that's not gonna be me. But
also, maybe he should, because maybe this is what's going to happen.
Right, but he sees the Dupree chaos, and he's like, that's not us either. And I think maybe one of the problems is that he isn't incorporating his wife into what they're going to be. And I think this is where we can ask, what's the point of this movie? And I think this is the point. It's like, ultimately, when you have all these problems, which, like, this movie is realistic in the sense that, like, you get married and like you have an important relationship in your life, but then other things happen. Dupree happens, trouble at work happens. Maybe you have a get together with friends that your wife disapproves, and you messed up. You didn't say anything, and ultimately, Carl is about to give up, and Dupree kind of recovers his Carlness by insulting his wife, which makes him realize that what actually matters is this relationship, and that's what you need to work on and all that. And I think there's nothing wrong with that message. It's one message. There's a second one, which relates more to Dupree and kind of like purpose in life and all that, but we can talk about that in a second. But I just want to say the movie doesn't make this point very well because of that muddled motivation in between. Like, like all of these things can happen, but these characters don't behave as if they're human.
Yes. They didn't have like a personality, they just have traits.
And also they have behaviors that randomly occur. Like, they're not motivated by anything. Not always, anyway.
But I have to say, I think that we are slashing this movie a lot. And I went to watch this movie and I had negative expectations.
Yeah.
Because I remember that especially the blockbusters comedies of my childhood and teenage years, especially teenage years, I remember disliking them a lot because I put them all in the same category as American Pie, for example. I think that this is the most, the raunchiest thing. And I was kind of pleasantly surprised that it's not that cheap.
Right. There's some references to sex, masturbation joke here and there.
Yeah,
but it's not about shocking the audience.
Yeah, and also they don't repeat them. They don't go they make the joke and they move on. They don't drag it too much, except for the porn.
I had low expectations. I also think that this movie is actually more enjoyable than I expected, based on my previous knowledge of it. Because when I got this back in the day and I watched it, I was kind of disappointed by it. I don't remember. I think it was just not that funny in general. It seems like this movie keeps kind of the silliness for the last 20 minutes of the movie. And I think that is the part that is actually kind of funny about this movie. But like overall, this movie is not that much of a comedy, really. It's more of a kind of like a soap opera type thing, you know?
I don't know. I don't really know how to classify things.
Okay.
It's just.
But do you think this movie is funny?
It's not my kind of humor.
Okay.
I just think that I would classify it as a comedy because it's not heavy. Like,
okay.
Even the things that happen in the beginning.
It's not a tragedy if that's your two
like,
categories.
It's not. The things that happen in the beginning, they're not funny, haha, all the time.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, what else can happen to make the situation even worse? That is kind of like a very comedy thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's like things that are funny, you know, in a conceptual sense. Like when Dupree says, you know, like, oh, I lost my home and because I don't have a job anymore. And Carl says, oh, but you're not sleeping in your car, are you? And he says, well, the car was actually tied to the job, so I don't have that anymore either. That's funny as a kind of a unexpected turn of the conversation. But it's not, you're never going to go like, that's my favorite joke, you know?
Yeah.
so maybe it is a comedy, but it's just not that funnily written. You know, like sometimes it tries to be funny but it's... I don't know. There's not even that many moments where I felt like, oh, they're trying to be funny, you know?
No,
like,
it's just
it's just its own weird thing.
This thing happens, and then it ends.
It's like a kind of a moody movie, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's briefly talk about the second kind of message of this movie, which is Dupree, right?
Yeah.
Dupree is seen as a bit of a loser, a bit of a a guy who doesn't accomplish anything in his life. He's just like sitting around and like he perpetually undersells himself on purpose. Like he goes to job interviews and says all the things he doesn't want to do, and thus is not very successful. And he gives this kind of empowering speech toward the end where he says, like he gives it to a bunch of like toddlers, you know, at school, because Molly is a school teacher, which is nice. Kudos on having both people in the marriage be professionals. But Dupree gives this speech and he says, you know, like, you're gonna, like, this is career day, right? And you're gonna see other, like, usually you're gonna see, like, some engineer or something who's gonna talk to the people, and the kids that want to be engineers later, they will have that spark in them. But I'm not here to do that. I'm here to tell, like, all those kids who are not gonna accomplish anything in life until they're, like, 40 or whatever.
Oh, like, just I feel very called out.
Just be, I don't remember what he actually says, but like, just know that there will be a moment, you know, like, just be ready. Just be ready for that moment when, and he specifically says when you blow 7 different kinds of smokes, which then becomes, at the very end of the movie, becomes the title of his book.
That's and it's also what he does.
It's like a motivational book that he writes and becomes successful.
To enter in the building.
Right. The idea is there will be a moment when, like, he says the mothership calls. He says everything is in weird ways, but the point stands. The idea that at one point, everybody will depend on you, and that's your moment to shine, and you will shine. And that.
But also, like, at one point, you will find your purpose, but it doesn't have to happen at the same time as everybody else, because what we've seen is Dupree being portrayed as a loser, also because he didn't have the same, like. Well, you go to college, you can get in a relationship, you get a corporate job, then you get married, and you start a family. It's kind of like the railroad in which everybody's supposed to be in. Yeah. But what if it doesn't happen to you? It doesn't mean that you're going to be, like, fucked forever. No, you just have to be ready for your moment to come, even though it's not at the same timeline as everybody else's. Yeah.
And I think that's empowering. And I think also Dupree is he has, like, incredible emotional intelligence. And that's, like, his skill, but it's just, like, not a very marketable skill because he's too honest, and so, like, he just says what he feels all the time, and it's not always good. You know, like, it also ruins his, like, relationship with this lady that he meets, who then turns out to be a bit of a, you know, like a manizer. Is that a thing?
Well, she used to be a Mormon. And then she moved out of the Mormonness and explored the world.
Yeah, and Dupree didn't know that, and he meets her, and it's a spiritual experience to him, and he just immediately crashes and burns with her,
Literally.
Because he falls off the bike?
No, because...
He does burn. But that happens before he crashes and burns with her. That was when times were good. Anyway, this movie has a lot of weird stuff in it. And I think celebrating kind of like, some people are different, and that's okay. That's another good message. It doesn't even require, I would have been fine if it didn't have that little coda at the end. Because they have the freeze frame. He jumps up and goes, yeah! And then there's freeze frame. And then we unfreeze and he falls down and he hurts his shin. Because that's the kind of comedy we have here. But then there's a little coda where we learn that he wrote a book and became successful. And he gives speeches now. And I don't need that. Like, it could also just be this personal victory. So
what I absolutely love about this movie is Dupree. I think it's a very endearing character, and I think I'm also
it helps that it's Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson is amazing.
Who's, I think, a producer on this movie as well.
It makes it so much cuter than everybody else would have done.
Yeah.
I also think that I'm in a point in life in which I need the Dupree speech.
Well,
I just think he's very endearing and very cute, and I was expecting him to be disgusting, and it was such a nice surprise that he was such a sweetheart.
Yeah.
But I was a bit disappointed that he became like a motivational writer / speaker.
Why?
Because he was so good, with just rallying around all the kids in the block, that I was really thinking, you should just start an after-school program and do something more community-based instead of doing something that makes him quote-unquote successful in also other people's terms.
Right, celebrity.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, what ties in with that is what I absolutely love, which is just generally speaking, the 4 people whose names are on the DVD cover, the main cast. That would be Owen Wilson, Matt Dillon, Kate Hudson, and Michael Douglas. They are almost unaware how poorly written this is. We got Dupree, who is just committing to this weird outsider sweetheart. We have Matt Dillon, who plays a straight man. And I read a review of this at some point that said one of the downsides of this movie is that Matt Dillon is kept on the leash because he can go pretty crazy in something about Mary, I
haven't seen it.
Well, but in this kind of comedy, he can go be crazy, which he does at the very end of the movie, right? And maybe some people would have liked a sustained performance like that, but I actually really like his straight man. He's got these glaring eyes, got the eyebrows, it's very expressive. He also comes across as a guy who's keeping the feelings down, he always looks like something's boiling in him. It's great. Then we have Kate Hudson, who is the most realistic character and probably the least poorly written character as well.
But also with the least amount of lines of all these characters.
That's fine, but she's this voice of reason who is both understanding but also, sometimes annoyed with what Carl and Dupree are doing, and she's trying to, like I said, she's a communicator and Carl kind of isn't, and that's, that's one of the main conflicts in the movie, and she gets this across so well as this she's not against Carl and Dupree and their friends having a party.
Yeah.
She's against kind of the extent to which it happens and the repercussions thereof.
Yeah. And also, it's for example, in the party scene that is one at the beginning of the movie, I think that what comes across is also that I'm not against you having a party, but then you're always busy or too tired to have time
it's almost
with me.
You don't want to spend time with me.
Yeah, and then you make nachos on my grandmother's thing.
It's inconsiderate. You're being inconsiderate, and it's not that you're doing this, it's the way you're doing it.
And I also like very much the friendship between that then develops between Holly and Dupree. Molly and Dupree.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's very nice.
Works.
It's good that all the 3 main characters are bonding with each other about how much they love the third.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
And then beyond those 3 main characters, we have a 4th famous actor here. I mean, there's other famous actors in it, but another main guy, and it's Michael Douglas, who plays he says these terrible things with this sly smile on his face.
Yeah.
Which is very Wall Street.
Gordon Gekko.
Gordon Gekko, yeah. Like this kind of like, almost like he's oblivious to it, or he just doesn't care. It's unclear which, but it's just delightful.
Yeah.
And he also is not afraid to like get in a fist fight with Carl, who is like, like 30 years younger than him or whatever. But like, he's just like, when the first time he just gets a consecutive, bumps him in the head. And then the second time they're confronted, he prepares for another, he takes like a water jug or something and hides it behind his back. Like he's ready for another brawl.
Yeah.
It's like this old man, like with throat cancer. Like,
I'm not starting it, but if it happens, I'm not going to back it down.
It's like you can buy that this guy is like he runs a successful company.
Yeah.
And he's in love with himself. He has his own face plastered across the screens in the lobby, But like, no, that's, this guy probably makes it in life. He's the anti-Dupree.
Yes.
It's like he's not a nice guy, but he knows how to play the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love all those performances. I do agree that Matt Dillon could be. Matt Dillon is one of my favorite actors because of Employee of the Month, and that's a movie in the collection, and Herbie Fully Loaded, where he plays the bad guy. I mean, that's a children's movie that's unremarkable for the most part, but it's also in the collection. But Matt Dillon in that, like, pay attention. He freaks out at the end, and it's the best thing ever.
Actually, what I hate about this movie is his forehead. He has a ginormous forehead. I cannot pay attention to pretty much anything else if he's on the screen.
Okay.
Because he almost looks like Mr. Incredible, but in real life. Like the forehead is the same size.
Okay.
It shouldn't be real.
He's a receding hairline.
It shouldn't be real. And then he has like the eyebrows, and it seems that he also almost has like a little bit of a bump in his skull.
Like a cartoon.
It looks, exactly. It looks like a cartoon.
That.
How I'm supposed to pay attention to the movie?
Cartoon faces are like, over the top expressive. So I like it.
It is too distracting for me.
Okay.
It's too much. Too much, too intense. I just think that like this movie proves that it's possible to make a comedy, that it's not just a series of stupid and sexual jokes one after another and just keep repeating them.
We watched some what's his face? Jew.
Woody Allen?
Yes. Some Woody Allen, like that's not crass, is it? I mean, it's not stereotypically comedy, but that's the point, isn't it? If you don't want to conform with the stereotype of American Pie, then you do something else. Here's other ways you can make a funny movie.
Do a movie that is just like laugh, 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 without it becoming crass.
I think you can't do a movie that's just that anyway. Like, that you just like can't stop laughing. Like think about like Father of the Bride or something like that.
That's my movie. That's the movie that's in the collection. I think it's a good comedy without being crass.
Right,
but because Steve Martin is in it.
That's kind of like You Mean Dupree in that it's more about relationships and it has something to say about it too. And it is a comedy. You know what I mean? Like it's not comedy movie bam. Like,
so it's like romantic comedy, emphasis on comedy instead of romantic.
Right. Just like Into the Spider-Verse is an excellent action comedy. Like it is really funny, but that's not the only thing. And Into the Spider-Verse also isn't just about action. It's also about family dynamics and things like that. So and coming of age, and so it's never just one thing anyway. And I think the crass comedy often is then tied in with like stoner humor and this has a little bit of that. I think.
When I said there was Seth Rogen, I was like, oh no, I knew it wasn't gonna happen.
This movie is directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, who this is their third movie. Think if you only had made 2 movies, you're already working with like Owen Wilson and Matt Dillon. Like what the fuck are they, like where'd they come from? Because the second movie was also like that. It was like William H. Macy was in it and Sam Rockwell, I think. Like actual names that you might have heard of. So they did a student film and then just immediately were catapulted into like this kind of thing. And now, they have done like Marvel movies and they have at some point were directors of the highest grossing movie of all time, like it is strange because this movie also, it doesn't just have these four names that we already talked about. It has Bill Hader and Seth Rogen, like other people that are famous in the comedy scene. They all apparently wanted to work with them or whatever, And I also don't particularly like Seth Rogen, but in this movie, there's one scene where Seth Rogen steals a bunch of porn, and then in the background of a scene, just laughs through it. You just go, and it's just because that's what he's known for, this stupid laugh. And they were just like, let's put that in as a punchline, or not so much a punchline as a rather like more of a comedic undercurrent otherwise, because there's a lot of drama in the room, and then outside someone runs by stealing porn, going, and I thought that was one of the funniest things about this movie. That and the candlestick stuff. Michael Douglas punching Matt Dillon in the face.
I think
just
that
funny.
Every time Michael Douglas is on screen is one of the funniest things in the movie.
Yeah, there's also a weird fantasy sequence, or like more like nightmare sequence.
Oh my gosh, that's awful though.
Where they're on a boat and Lance Armstrong is there. Speaking of the Russo brothers,
there is also him.
Obviously, the Marvel movies, they all have the little, Easter egg post-credit sequence, and so does this movie. So this was like, this is 2 years before Iron Man even, and it seems to be already like a thing that these guys like to do, which is a little post-credit scene. We see Lance Armstrong, who's like a personal hero of Dupree, reading Dupree's book, and then saying, Lanceness.
Yeah.
Lanceness. Good times.
So I don't know how they became popular and how they made to make it. Maybe everybody's friends with each other. Maybe they're really. Maybe they have the weed.
This movie was successful, I guess. Not wildly, It wasn't Avengers Endgame.
It was mildly successful.
But it it grossed 130 million on like 50 million budget. Like that's enough to return a profit. They've also been directing and I think producing some of Community, which is maybe why Owen Wilson shows up at some point in like as a cameo in an episode of Community. By the way, we are also watching that show, and eventually we're going to talk about it on the podcast. But the next TV show we're going to do is going to be Chuck.
Oh.
Probably at the beginning of
But
autumn
not
sometime.
now. Now we have another movie to watch.
No, just pointing it out because it takes a little longer to watch in the whole TV show.
People, start watching Chuck, please. Come on.
Now, I thought, finally,
to
wrap up You, Me, and Dupree, we could talk about, since you and I, we lived together, not for too long, for like half a year. What if I had a friend who was basically a Dupree, like a weirdo guy who's like down on his luck? Like, what would we do? What do you think we would? Because unlike Carl, I would ask you this question first. I wouldn't just go like, yes, come in.
It's weird. If it was really like Dupree at the beginning, like it would just be 3 hours and then I'm going to pay for a hotel for him. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm too autistic for that.
Give Dupree money?
Not even cash. And just like, listen, there is a room here. I pay in the tab. You stay here and until you get back on your feet.
Okay.
But please leave my house because I need quiet time.
Our life isn't a movie, right?
Yeah.
And if you had someone like Dupree who was waiting for the mothership to call him, like, wouldn't you think that Dupree needs help? Like, he can't just sit there and wait. You wouldn't just kick that person out. Would you refer them to someone? Like, what would you do?
I don't really know how
social services
it works, and also it depends. Like
soup kitchen.
In my experience, you cannot just force people to get help.
That's
so
true.
If you could try to talk to them and see if they would consider searching help, and if they need like your not just financial but also just emotional support. It's like maybe they don't want to go alone because they're ashamed, and like you can go with them, and like. But if they don't want it, it's like everything's fine and just waiting for the mothership. You cannot really do much.
Yeah. But if the mothership doesn't call and he doesn't get lucky with the book deal, this guy is going to be one of the crazies on the street. That's how he goes. Heartless. Also, the one thing that I was wondering, is it ever mentioned if Dupree has any family? Like a mom or something, you know?
No, it seems like he has nobody.
Oh, it seems that way, but like, it's not part of the movie, is it?
No.
Because that's another weird thing. It's like, you know, like, maybe this guy's traumatized because he lost his parents at a young age, you know, like that kind of, like, it might be psychological issues. It might not just be like a relaxed worldview, you know? And that's more concerning.
Yeah, but yeah, you can just try to talk to the people and see if there is some way that you can make a difference.
Yeah.
But if they don't want to listen after a certain point, you have to make them go their own way.
Yeah.
What if I had a Dupree, though?
What do you mean?
How would you react to a Dupree of mine?
No, I think it doesn't make a difference who it is. You know what I mean? Because we would be dealing with it together.
Yes, but you asked me how I would react, and I told you.
Like, if you wanted Dupree here, like, you already said you couldn't deal with it. So I can't say, like, well, he move in with us. Like, what do you...
Well, if I want a Dupree here and I'm able to deal with it, probably you also are able to deal with it. Is this the point?
Okay, so your friend Dupree wants to move in. I think there would have to be... I mean, it's a good idea to have some ground rules. Like, I don't know, if you're sleeping on our couch, you're not sleeping nude. Things like that. I also think that there would be, like, you know, on, like, July 12th, you're out. You know, like that kind of thing. Like, you can stay here, but not indefinitely. And by that, I mean specifically not longer than this. Like, because not indefinitely is something people say.
Yeah.
And that can be stretched to anything. Because indefinitely is not a real, tangible thing. So maybe that would be a good thing. Say, like, look, this is how long. And then also maybe, like, you know, like, if you're going to live with us. Yeah, like, right now you don't have a job. So you can't pay rent. But really, you owe us something. Like, depending, like, I don't know. Like, this, if it's your friend, I don't know. Because it depends on what relationship you have. Like, I have some friends.
As a people, I have no friends. So there is no case. This case is not happening.
I have some friends who, if they needed a place to stay for, like, 2 months, I wouldn't go, like, pay me something for it, you know? Like, I have some, you know. But then there's other people who, like, you know, like, I feel like you might take advantage of this.
Yeah.
You know? And if it felt like that, again, if it's your friend, then you have to, like, figure out what that is. Then you go, like, you know what, like, I need a contribution from your side. It doesn't have to be money necessarily. It could be you look after, like, you vacuum the place, and so we don't have to, you know, like that kind of thing. That's something that happens in a movie as well, a little bit, where, like, he cooks for them. He does, like, burn down the place and then fix it.
Like, when it starts, because it seems that Dupree just hits rock bottom and then he starts building things up. And after he hits rock bottom and starts, like, going on the bicycle and everything.
This is after Mandy, though.
Yeah.
Even before that, like, on the first night, he invades their privacy, goes to the bathroom, terrible things. And then the next morning, he makes pancakes for them.
Yeah.
But this is more of a, like, this could be another, like, it's very, like, there's not a clear trajectory for any of these characters.
Yes.
So maybe it's actually a problem with the movie.
So it seems that there was something in Dupree that make him feel that he should do something about it. But until he hits rock bottom with Mandy, he doesn't have the drive for, like, taking charge of his life.
So hopefully your friend Dupree will be okay. You can let me know if we need to discuss something regarding that. Luckily, Owen Wilson, Randy Dupree, made it. He's fine now. He's got Paco as a boombox holder. And we're going to move on with the Cringy Movie Collection podcast. We got one more movie before the summer.
Oh.
Maybe you remember last year we did a little summer break. We're going to do it again this year. And this movie is going to be The Incredibles.
Oh, did I just reference it?
Yeah.
Because
we're
we have a
stay
poster.
with big foreheads.
Oh my gosh.
Brad Bird, Pixar movie. You know what I'm talking about.
The foreheads will haunt us into the summer.